In this video, I'm going to go over just the basics of an if statement. And an if statement allows us to create a switch where we say, if something is true, do this, and if it's not, do this other thing. And it requires conditional statement, which means we're going to use less than and equal to, not equal to, and there's a couple more that we can use in there. So to start out, I have a for loop that runs 50 times. I is less than 50. And each time it runs, it adds 1 to the value of I. And I'm drawing an ellipse at a random location each time the for loop runs. So in this, x is equal to a random number that's between 0 and 400, or 0 and 800, and y is also equal to a random number between 0 and 800. And I'm using the built-in variables of width and height. And each circle is filled with a white color, and it has no stroke. So when I run this, I get a random image each time of different circles. But say, for example, I wanted to fill half of them with red and then half of them with blue. What I can do is use an if statement. So up at the top here, the first step is I need to comment out this fill because I don't want it to fill with white anymore. And I'm going to write if, and then parentheses. I know that I is going to run 50 times, so I could use the value of I. So I could say if I is less than 25, then, and notice that your statement is in parentheses, and then you have to use the curly brackets afterwards. Then fill with 25500. So we're going to fill with red. Otherwise, else, and I can give curly brackets afterwards and say fill with 00255, which is blue. And when I run this again, now we'll see that half of them fill with red and half of them fill with blue. I could change this just so less than 10. Now only a few of them will be filled with red. I could also use the x value here since it's going random. I could command x, put this below because I need to make sure that x and y is initialized. I could say if x is greater than halfway, so width, is less than halfway. So this is saying, look at the x position. If it's less than width divided by 2, then fill it with red, otherwise fill it with blue. So we should see all the ones on this side turning red, all the ones on blue turning that side. We could do it in a quadrant also. So I could use an AND function. So inside here, I can say if the x is less than the width divided by 2 and y is less than height divided by 2. So this is how we say AND. Then only fill with red. So we're only going to get this top quadrant. But maybe I want it to do something like an either or. So if I said if x is divided by 2, I can do the two line signs, which are between enter and backspace, and this means logical or. So if this thing is true or this thing is true, then do your first statement here. So now you see it's everything but this last element here, because the less than the height is this area, less than the width is this area. So you see you've got a lot of different options in terms of how you're playing with your design here and if and else statements. Additionally, say I wanted to do something like if I is less than, let's see, if I is less than 10, fill it with red. All right, but maybe I want another if statement. So if, else if I is greater than, or if I is greater than 40, do this thing. And then I could even have another statement down here that says if it's not either of these things, else fill 0, 2550. So it's going to fill with green. And I need one more closing statement and a semicolon. And I'm going to Command T or Control T to space it out. So now you see everything that's below 10 is going to fill with red. Everything that is above 40 is going to fill with this blue, and everything between those numbers is going to fill with this green color. So you can use else if to put in another conditional statement here. Now, although we're changing the fill color, I could also use it to change the dimensions, but I would need to store this in a variable. So what I'd have to do is say let D and D, and then say above outside the for loop, I would have to give it a variable. So int D equals, we'll start off with 20 or 30. And then here I can go, if it's below 10, D equals 10. If it's above 40, D equals 50. Let's actually do it a little bit bigger. D equals 100. Otherwise, D equals 40. So now we'll get several different size circles inside here. And this is starting to get way more interesting. What if you change this to 100 times in here? Right? It's going to increase that amount of blue because they're going to get a lot more over 40. So you can see how this will start to work when you use if statements. And they allow for a lot of control, but also a little bit of randomness as you'd like.